How do you know if your dog is injured? Now, you could go to a vet and you could spend an astronomical amount of money just to have them come back and tell you your dog's fine. Or you can get this. This is a thermal imaging camera, and it will tell you everything. Now, thermal imaging in canines typically refers to the use of thermal or infrared cameras to detect heat patterns and temperature variations in a dog's body. Now, this technology can be extremely valuable in veterinary medicine, search and rescue, and even behavioral studies. Here's a breakdown of how it applies to canines. Now, thermal imaging, the way it really works is thermal imaging cameras detect infrared radiation, basically heat, emitted by living beings and objects in canines. Now, this can, reveal areas of higher or lower temperatures on their bodies, which might indicate inflammation, injury, poor circulation, or other physiological changes. Now, the images produced show a color gradient. You're going to find warmer areas are in reds and yellows, and cooler areas we're going to find are going to be in blues and purples. Now, what applications do we use thermal imaging in with our canines? Well, the first one's going to be, we call it our veterinarian diagnostics. So injury detection. This is going to be huge, okay? Thermal imaging can identify hot spots caused by inflammation, arthritis, muscle strains, or cold spots from reduced blood flow. It's a huge tool that's going to give me great visualization so I can really see what's going on with the canine. So then I'm able to know how I'm going to deploy my photobiomodulation, how I'm going to deploy my stance analyzer, cold compression therapy, hydro tank therapy, whatever tool I'm going to bring to the table. Thermal imaging camera is going to allow for me to decide what tool I need to use next. Thermal imaging is also a great detective in uncovering, pain management. And it's beautiful because it's a non-invasive way to locate the pain or discomfort that our dogs are feeling, but they just can't vocalize, right? And then the third area in our veterinarian diagnostics that thermal imaging really helps us with is going to be our circulatory issues. Okay, so it's going to detect abnormalities in blood flow, potentially signaling conditions like thrombosis. Another huge area that our thermal imaging camera technology really can help us in is in search and rescue. Thermal imaging helps locate lost or injured dogs and even humans in low visibility conditions like darkness, fog, dense vegetation by detecting their body heat. A couple cool stories recently that have ended in great news in the media have been an infant has been found using a thermal imaging camera. A 10-year-old girl was recently found by a drone that had thermal imaging technology. So again, it's a great technology that can help find our lost loved ones. And another area that I really see thermal imaging, and it's something that we've been doing for 15 years with, is the behavioral and stress analysis. There have been studies that have been used using thermal imaging to monitor temperature changes in a dog's face, around the eyes and nose as indicators of stress, anxiety or excitement, for example. We could take a drop in nasal temperature might correlate with, heightened arousal. Something that we've been doing here at Canines for America for about 15 years, right, with our temperament diagnosis program, is we've been deploying the thermal imaging camera with our chloric, sanguine, melancholic, and phlegmatic canines because we want to be able to see Does a chloric canine, are their body temperatures fluctuating different than a phlegmatic canine versus a sanguine, a melancholic canine? Depending on when we introduce stress, when we introduce different excitation, are we able to validate that temperament diagnosis and truly see that with that chloric canine, with that excitation, right, bringing them to a 10, are we seeing that their body temperature really elevates at a high level versus a phlegmatic? Do we see more cooler temperatures with them when we introduce heavy stimulants to the canine? Another area that the thermal imaging camera really comes into play is when we're training our canines and when we're training our working dogs. For military or police canines, thermal imaging can ensure that they're not, over exerted by monitoring their body temperatures during, intense activity. A recent story would be with our canine Finn. Canine Finn we've been working with for a little over a year with a local police department. Canine Finn, over this year, we have about 52 weeks of data with that canine. We have imagery work that we've been doing for 52 weeks. So we have things that we can constantly compare and contrast to. So for an example, this officer gave us a call, and because of Canine Finn being temperament diagnosis as a chloric canine, Canine Finn had training this day and just wasn't acting like himself, which would be always at a 10. So Canine Finn on this particular day was kind of, that more lethargic, a 6 or a 7. For Canine Finn, that's abnormal. So we went down to the training site, and we took Canine Finn out of the car. Canine Finn was being rested in an air-conditioned car. We got Canine Finn out, and we were able to deploy that thermal laser. And quickly, what we were able to uncover is that Canine Finn's complete lumbar area was incredibly inflamed, incredibly red. Our heat signature is also able to pick up on the variant degrees of that area that's been traumatized. So we can see is it 115 degrees, is it 90 degrees, 85. We're able to see how hot is that inflamed area. So in this particular morning session, we saw that Canine Finn was had some trauma, had something going on in that area. We were able to then compare to the most recent image of Canine Finn, the prior week, to where in that lumbar area there was no red. There was nothing going on. There was no trauma. So immediately we knew, hey, there's something up. There's something going on here. Let's go ahead and let's keep Canine Finn out of all bite work, as he was a dual-purpose dog, because we know that Canine Finn's not acting right. We know he's not feeling well. We know that's an area that's going to trouble him. But as a chloric canine, what do we know from our chlorics? They're going to go and do it anyway. It doesn't matter how much pain they're in. When they see that stimulant, that excitation is going to kick through, and it's going to mask any type of pain that they're feeling. And so Canine Finn's only going to get himself in a more negative situation. But we were able to Canine Finn doing his single purpose work, his olfactory, his detection work, and be able to work through odors and keep his mind sharp, but just kind of pulling the body out a little bit. So kind of a great way that we're able to deploy our thermal imaging out in the field. Some of the benefits of thermal imaging, it's going to be non-invasive and it's stress-free for the animal. That's the biggest thing. It's non-invasive and it is completely 100% stress-free for the animal. It gives us incredibly quick, real-time results without having to do any type of sedating the animal or even putting my hands on the animal. Sometimes when we're dealing with animals that have maybe some negative behavioral reactions, putting your hands on the animal can cause a whole another set of issues that we don't need to get into, especially if the animal is hurt, and trying to touch them and do a palpation test in that injured area could open up a can of worms. So again, quick results without needing to put my hands on that canine. Thermal imaging can detect issues before they're even visible. That's the biggest thing. We want to be more preventative We don't want to have to be, now dealing with an issue that we're going to have to go through traditional methods of getting an x-ray or having our veterinarian come out or bringing our canine to the vet and getting a physical exams. So it's also very, very cost reducing. It's a great tool to have where now I don't have to go pay for x-rays all the time, and I don't have to constantly be seeing my vet because my chloric dog or my Sangui dog is constantly getting themselves in situations that have to make me bring them to that doctor. Now, like anything, there are limitations to the thermal imaging tool. One of the limitations that I see is it's a surface level tool only. So what does that mean? Well, it doesn't see beneath the skin like an x-ray or an MRI, right? We can't do that submarine deep dive into the body of the canine. So it's only going to tell us, hey, something's going on, but that's all I need it for. That's all I want it for. If I'm doing dock diving, if we're doing agility work, if we're doing heavy obedience, if I'm doing tracking work, whatever type of work I'm doing outside with a canine, it's a quick tool that I can just pull out of my bag, take a couple quick images, and I'm going to know, hey, there's something not right here, and I can pull back on my canine instead of going more full throttle and causing more of that soft tissue injury to become a serious injury. Another kind of a limitation that thermal imaging camera has is depending on the fur thickness and color can affect the accuracy of my camera. Thicker coats, can mask the heat signatures. So for example, I don't want to be taking images of my dog and trying to look for, inflamed areas if I've been out in 100-degree heat for the past, 15, 20, 30 minutes, etc., because my imagery is going to be all off. When I do my imagery, I like to bring my dog out of an air-conditioned, cool environment that they've been resting in for at least an hour. So I can bring that body temperature, everything can be brought down. So when then I do put that camera on them, I'm going to see more of that true reading of what's really going on. Other external factors would be that ambient temperature reading, right? Wet fur. If I'm doing dock diving and my dog becomes lame a little bit, well, my dog's been dock diving in, let's call it 50 degree, 60 degree water. That's gonna, really change my, my heat signatures and what's going on, because that dog's gonna be showing up a lot cooler than what they truly are. So all in all, the thermal imaging camera is just an absolute fantastic tool, and it's a must-have tool. I think for any dog owner, you should definitely have this tool in your bag. Trainer, law enforcement, military, whoever you are out there, if you have an active dog, thermal imaging is a must-have. All right, so let's get into a little show and tell. We've been talking thermal imaging camera. I know you guys are dying. What does it look like? It's this big. This is my thermal imaging camera. So it's by a company called Flare. You can get these on Amazon. You can go on their direct website. There might be other competitors out there. This one I picked up, it's, they run now, I think, like about $300. So they have them for iPads, and they also have them in case you want to run an Android system. You have a Samsung player to that degree. So this is the camera. This is how big it is. I'll get it out here for you guys, right? So this is your Flare camera. Super small. That's all it is. Very, very simple, very easy. There's your connection. This one particular is kind of the old iPad connection. So that's why this thing's about $300, because then you're going to need about another $300 iPad to plug it into. Okay. Or if you have a Samsung player, you can plug that in. They also have handheld devices by this company, by other companies out there. That is the camera and the screen, everything all in one. I prefer with what I do in my system, I like to use my iPad because it's a bigger screen, and then I can do a lot of other cool things on it, such as I can edit, I can circle, I can draw, I can bring it in, 1,000 different views. I can upload it into other software I have, where I can break down the angle of a dog's, injury and just get more data, more depth to it. If we look at this dog, we're going to see the heat signature on the right shoulder. Okay, so this dog actually had a surgery on its right shoulder area. So we can see whenever this dog does heavy movement, we're getting inflammation in that area. Well, we know what happened to that canine. We know that canine had a shoulder injury, had that shoulder surgery. So what we're able to do here, because now we're using photobiomodulation with this canine. So what we're doing is we're constantly taking images of that canine with our thermal imaging camera. And then what we're doing is we put these into a daily log. And as we're applying our photobiomodulation onto this damaged area, our photobiomodulation now is going to start regrowing all the damaged cells that have occurred in this area. So what we want to see here at Canines for America is I want to see, as I take another picture tomorrow and then the next day, as I apply photobiomodulation, as I apply hydrotherapy in the hydro tank, I want to see this area start to get smaller and reduce itself in size. And not only do I want to see it get smaller and reduce itself in size, but I also want to see that temperature signature on this canine, on that damaged area. I want it to see it to reduce. So right now, this is in Celsius. It's at 61.4 degrees Celsius, which is extremely hot. So I want to see that go down to 60. I want to see it to go to 59, 50, etc. And I want to see that area start to shrink itself. That way I will know, my client will know that that canine is getting better. What we're doing is working. So if I'm taking these images and I see the image come back after doing photobiomodulation, right? After doing all the different techniques that we're doing with that canine that are very invasive. If I see that that area is not getting smaller, if I see that temperature is rising all the time, now I know there's something else going on. So then I'll bring in my vet, I'll bring in the team of veterinarians that will be able to take it to the next level, because what we're doing isn't working. And that is a problem, because what we do know from all of our research and from applying these techniques over the last 15 years, this works. I can tell you flat out right now, we've been doing this for 15 years on some of the most elite high-level canines out there. And this system is a system that does not fail. It is a system that gives us some of the most visualization, eyes on a situation with our canines, that we're immediately able to interfere and slow that process down. And what I mean by slowing the process down, by using thermal imaging, I'm able to quickly, in real time, see something before it happens, before it gets negative, right? Before that injury really starts to grow and kind of get out of hand, that we can't get our hands on it. What have you guys experienced that you think a thermal imaging camera would have given you an answer that you didn't have at the time?